3 messages before today's interview educates and motivates you. First, if you're a domain name investor, don't you have unique legal needs that require domain name technical know-how and industry experience? That's why you need David Westlow of Wiley Ryan. Go search for David Westlow on Domain Sherpa, watch his interview, and you can see for yourself that he can clearly explain issues, can help you with buy-sell agreements, deal with website content issues and UDRP actions, and even help you write your website terms and conditions. David Westlow is the lawyer to call for internet legal issues. See for yourself at newmediaip.com. Second, managing multiple domain name marketplace and auction site accounts is a pain. Inevitably, you forget to sign into one and you lose a great domain, or worse. Now imagine using a single, simple to use and comprehensive control panel to manage all of your accounts. That's Protrata. You can set up search filters, analyze domains, automate bidding, list domain names for sale, buy domains across all major marketplaces. Protrata also has a new semantic engine that builds Google-friendly websites with rich content and network feeds. Sign up at protrata.com to get 20 free credits and start building and monetizing your domains today. Finally, if you have questions about domain names, where should you go to ask them? The answer is dnforum.com. Not only is DN Forum the largest domain name forum in the world, it's the best. You can learn about domain names and the industry, buy and sell domain names, talk about the domain name news that's happening in the industry, and even meet domainers just like yourself. Register for a free DN Forum account and begin advancing your skills and knowledge today. And when you do sign up, send me a friend request so we can connect on DN Forum. Here's your program. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm the publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the website where you come to learn how to become a successful domain name entrepreneur and investor directly from the experts. We've all heard that domain names are referred to as online real estate. In fact, the analogy goes on referencing websites as web properties and internet homes. So when it comes to investing, what's the difference between physical and virtual real estate? Or is there a difference? Today, we're joined by Rebekah Campbell, founder and CEO at Posse.com. Rebekah has been referred to by the Sydney Morning Herald as the woman who bought a domain name instead of a house. Rebekah, welcome to the show.
Hi.
It's great to have you here. I appreciate, probably most importantly right off the bat, that it's early for you in Australia. Thanks for getting up at 8 a.m. and being in the office before everybody else came in.
No worries.
So I want to ask you a few questions to start off the bat about the purchase process and then go back in time and learn more about your startup, its business model, and how it's changed over time. So you purchased Posse.com instead of putting a down payment on a house. What was it that changed your mind from the housing market to a domain name?
Well, I didn't really think about it in terms of the housing market or a domain name. I never was really that excited about the idea of buying a house. I was an entrepreneur and I was much more interested in kind of backing myself and my own businesses rather than getting into something that was kind of boring like everybody else. So I came up with the idea for what has now become Posse.com whilst I had another business, a successful kind of small business. And it was originally a music idea, but I knew that it could be something much bigger than music. And so I wanted to choose a name that it was a word that people would, that kind of meant something, and that was flexible and it sounded big. Mm-hmm. So, and I also wanted to choose a name that had 2 letters in it, like a double letter, because I noticed that most successful sites have double letters, and it's just something that I thought would be cool.
Like which sites besides maybe Google?
Google and Google, Yahoo, Facebook.
Yeah.
Some of the big ones.
Got it. So what was the process that you went through to acquire Posse.com?
So I was looking for a while for a name. I didn't think of a name and then go and look for a domain name. I just started by looking at the domain names that were available first. Mm-hmm. So I spent a good couple of months trailing through domain name sale websites, and just there's other sites that I used that kind of generated a whole lot of different names that were available. And so I just spent a lot of time on those sites, and I trailed through Sedo.com, and there was a whole lot of sites that weren't on auction but were listed as available. And so there's like hundreds of thousands of them, or it must be hundreds of thousands of them, because it took me a long time just trailing through name after name after name after name. And then I found posse.com, and I was like, wow, that is a really cool name. I really like the word posse. I like that it means like your group of friends, but it has history, and it comes from Western, like a gang that come together to do something good. And also this kind of modern day R&B, hip hop kind of sense of your posse as being your group of friends. And I just thought, hey, that was such a cool name. And I could use that for so many different things. I just got very attached to it. And I sent an email to the guy who owned it and offered him $5,000. And he came back to me and he said, I'll accept $20,000. And so I was like, wow, that's, at the moment I'm just kind of tinkering around with this idea of starting a tech company. So $20,000 is a lot of money to spend on something that at that time I wasn't completely serious about. And so I went back and I said, okay, how about $10,000? And he came back and said, no, I'll take 20. And then I didn't do anything for a while. About a month went by and I started pitching the idea to some potential investors.
The business idea, not the domain.
The business idea. The business idea.
Okay.
I started pitching the business idea. So I went out to Warner Music and I did a pitch to them. And I used the name posse.com. I said, we're going to call it posse.com. And they were like, everybody was like, how did you get that domain name? That is like amazing. And I was like, well, I didn't say that I didn't have it yet. But I didn't take any investment before I had the name, obviously. But I just kind of was just trialing it. And it just felt so good. I thought, wow, I have to get this name. And so I went back and I offered $15,000. And then I got this terrible email, which was from Sedo.com, not the guy, saying, you have hit the reserve price on this domain name. Now it's going to go to public auction. And if you're the highest bidder in 7 days' time, you'll get it for $15,000.
Right.
So I was like, oh, no. Now everyone is going to see this name, and from what I've been seeing, people are spending for a real word. I think this is going to go for a lot more than $15,000.
Right. So you thought that $15,000, hey, you could close the deal right there. But what the seller actually did was send it to auction, and yours was the first bid at that price.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then everybody was going to see it. So then it went onto the Sedo kind of live auction for a week, and nobody bid on it for the whole 7 days until the last night. The auction closed. In Australia, it was the middle of the night. It was like 6 a.m. in the morning, I think, that the auction closed. So I set my alarm for 3 a.m. so I could wake up and see if anybody had outbid me, because no one had outbid me yet. And I woke up at 3 and I checked the site, and someone had put gone up to $16,000. So I was like, oh no, the starts. So I went to 16.5, and then I went to sleep again. I woke up an hour later, and they outbid me again by $500. So I did the same thing. Went back to sleep, got up again, and then it was like just before 6 o'clock. And the guy so there was another person had the highest bid, and so I just kept bidding up in $500 increments. And then it seemed like the site extended the auction by, it must have been about, it was either 5 or 15 minutes, but it seemed like a long time. It got extended every time somebody made a bid. So this thing just kept on going. And we got into smaller increments, but I just kept going. By that time, I was so tired. I was kind of delusional because it was the middle. I'd been up all night, and I was just like, "Damn it, I'm gonna get this." So I just kept bidding, and then it got to $28,000, and then it closed, and I got it. And I remember I was just sitting there in my pajamas, and by this time, a friend had come over, and he was like, "What are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I just spent $28,000 on a domain name." And he's like, "Are you crazy?" I was like, I think I am crazy.
So did you have an upper bound? Did you have a certain amount of money that you were putting away for maybe a house someday, and had a cap on it?
Oh, yeah. I'd been looking for a house. My mum had actually found me a house to buy. And I was pretty serious. I hadn't made an offer or anything, but I was pretty serious about buying a house. And my parents were excited about, finally I'd got enough money to get a deposit, the next stage in life, I'm going to get a house. And I had to call my mum that day and say, hey, I can't buy the house anymore.
So what did your mom say?
She was like, what's a domain name? She said, can you live in a domain name? And I said, no, it's not like that. Kind of can live in it, but, not like really, but you can put things in it.
So has she forgiven you since then, or is she still a bit miffed about the whole purchase?
Yeah, no, she's really excited about the business, so it's all good now.
Excellent. All
She
right.
wasn't that
So
mad.
I'm sorry.
She wasn't that mad. I mean, they know that I do things like this.
All right. So I've done this on almost every major purchase I've made in my life, whether it was a house or a car or, a big domain name. After I made the purchase, I've always felt buyer's remorse. Did you feel it as soon as the auction had closed and you knew you bought it?
No, I didn't actually. I felt like I did question whether I was crazy or not, though, for that whole day. I remember that day quite clearly, actually. I went out that night to a music awards show, and I was telling people, oh, I couldn't use my credit card because I had some part of the deposit on my credit card. So I remember explaining to everybody all day, I don't have any money. I've just maxed out my credit card on the deposit on this thing. And they're like, what is it? And I bought this domain name. And
That's a
everybody just thought I was
great way to
crazy.
get your friends to buy the drinks when you go out.
Yeah, it was actually. Um, but
Or, so
but I don't know. I didn't.
$28,000 on a single domain name. Have you ever purchased a domain name as much as that prior to or after that purchase?
No, I've never purchased a domain name before.
You've never purchased a domain name before?
I mean, only for my businesses, like just my own name. I've never bought a name off somebody else that was good.
Wow. So as an entrepreneur, what made you think that this was going to be a good investment when you hadn't even built up a business yet?
You know what? I already had a successful business before I did Posse.
Uh-huh.
And I knew that if I actually took a leap and started this thing, that it was going to have to be really big. Otherwise, I wasn't, it was stupid for me to give up the business that I already had. So there was no way that I was going to do this and do a kind of small business on the side and see how it went. So I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this properly. And if I'm going to do it properly, if I have ambitions to do something which is big like Google or Facebook, it's got to have a really cool name, and it's got to have a name which is short, people remember, and what preferably is a word. And so, yeah, I just decided right from the outset that it was important that the name was really good.
All right. So let's take a step back and understand what Posse.com is so we can understand why you decided to spend your house down payment on a domain name. What were you doing just before you had the idea and went and pitched people on Posse.com?
Oh, so I had a band management company. I had one of Australia's largest music management companies. So I managed a lot of successful Australian music artists. We
And
had
some
11
big names
artists.
as well.
Yeah, some big names over here in Australia, and we had a lot of success in Europe and Japan, and not so much in America, unfortunately. But we did well around the world with a bunch of our artists. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I was ready for the next thing.
Yeah. So how many years did you do band management?
I had that business for 8 years.
Great. And how many artists or bands did you have under management?
We had 11 artists and 8 staff, and we had an office in London. And yeah, it was a really cool it was a fun little business, especially I was in my 20s at the time, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
so what happened to that business, Rebekah?
I ended up breaking it up. So as an artist management company, you can't unfortunately sell it because you are the personal representative for artists. So I helped find new management for a bunch of the really successful artists, and I managed to negotiate some ongoing royalties as well. But it's unfortunate that style of business isn't the kind of business where you're really building an asset that you can sell.
Right.
Which is something that I want to do with my next business.
So what point in the 8 years did you realize that did you get the idea for Posse.com?
Oh, well, I was running a tour for one of my bands, actually. The idea has evolved a lot since what it was originally, but I was doing a tour for a big band over here called Evermore. Mm-hmm. And we put a tour on sale, and we do kind of maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people a city. And this tour, you can tell pretty quickly how each show is going to go based on the first 24 hours or 48 hours of sales. And there was one show in this town called Perth, which was a disaster. It just wasn't shifting. These tickets weren't selling. And so I found myself spending a whole lot of money on advertising. That wasn't working. And so I was like, how am I ever going to sell these tickets? And I had this idea, which was the fans of Evermore are so crazy about them. I thought, I bet if I can get tickets to them, they could take them to school and sell them to their friends. So we literally emailed the database in Perth and said, who'd want to be an official promoter of Evermore? We'll send you tickets, and if you can sell them to your friends, we'll pay you a commission like a real promoter. if you sell more than things like 10 tickets, you get to watch the show side of stage like a real promoter. And it was just crazy. Kids just went nuts, running around town selling tickets. So originally the idea was to create a referral system for concert tickets, and it enabled people to kind of create a playlist of their favorite artists, and that playlist would promote all of the shows of those artists and link into the existing ticketing sites.
Sounds like a great idea. I know when I was in college, I had my favorite bands. My same friends loved it. If I could sell them tickets and we can all go together, it's a fantastic event.
Yeah. So, that was the original idea. We launched that. We actually did pretty well with it. We did $2 million of tickets in the first 14 months or so.
Wow.
But there was challenges with the model, which was it relied on a whole lot of partnerships with ticketing sites. Mm-hmm. And it was clear that if we really wanted to grow this into a massive business that we wanted it to be, it was going to be a massive technical overhead to do all of these integrations. And, the integrations, like the feeds kept breaking, and it was just we didn't have a lot of control over the reporting that we were getting. And so I had that challenge, and at the same time I recognized a massive opportunity in retail, because we had started doing nightclubs, mm-hmm. and nightclubs were unticketed. And then I was like, well, if we could do nightclubs, we could do shops. And then so I went out to a whole lot of retailers and started researching the retail market, and found that there was a lot of the retailers really were not liking the daily deal model, but really wanted to grow their businesses. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, wow, I could really use this similar idea, take it to retail, and build something that would be useful for both retailers and for users. Mm-hmm. And so I took that and then built the new model for Posse.
Gotcha. So the original model was you were going to work with ticketing agencies or box offices, sell tickets on their behalf, but you found that it was too difficult to form a lot of different relationships. So you basically created a back end for clubs to sell more tickets.
It was just done through an iPhone app. Where it was just for door sales, because clubs don't sell tickets. So
gotcha.
That's why we could do clubs. And then as soon as we were doing things that weren't ticketed, that were door sales, then if you can do door sales at clubs, you could do just restaurants or anything. Just opened it up.
Anything with a cover charge.
Much broader. Yeah. The whole business model has flipped completely now. It's still got a lot of the core ideas to it, mm-hmm. but it's now a completely different application.
So $2 million in ticket sales in 14 months, that sounds pretty successful to me for a startup.
Yeah, it was. And so it was challenging to convince the investors that we needed to change. But in the long run, time will tell whether we made the right call or not. But
yeah,
it was pretty obvious. The entrepreneur living and breathing the business every day, I could see the flaws in the model. And, we had a hypothesis. Many parts of the hypothesis were true in terms of the behavioral ideas, right. But there were just many technical challenges that we just, there was no way of really knowing until you did it.
Yeah. So at what point did you get venture capital funding for your business?
So I put in a bunch of the early money myself, and I got a couple of friends to also put in money. So
okay, so good. Let me back up then. So you had the idea for Posse after your business, and then you decided that you were going to start it up, and so you were going to put in money, and then a couple of close friends were going to put in money.
Yeah. Okay. So I put in about 120 grand of my own money. So that was pretty much all of my deposit for my house. The rest of it I tipped into the business. Then I and a couple of my friends put in about the same amount. So I raised about $250,000 at the beginning, and that was enough to build a prototype of the first version of the site. Mm-hmm. And then I used that prototype to go and do a proper proper seed round. So, and that process took me a whole year because I'd never done it before. I didn't really have any contacts. I had to learn everything from scratch. So I went out and I estimated that I actually in that year would have done at least 400 pitches. I was pitching every day, multiple times to different people, and it was at the beginning of it I was really bad. By the end of it I was pretty good.
So you put in $250,000 of your money and a couple of close friends. Were the close friends working in the business also, or did they just know you and trust you enough that they wanted to be an early investor?
Yeah, they just knew me and trusted me enough that they wanted to be an early investor. So
Okay. So with $250,000, did you go out and hire employees to work on it or contractors to start building out the proof of concept?
I hired a couple of part-time contractors and I hired a outsourced development team.
Okay.
Which, in hindsight, would have done it a whole lot differently. I would have bootstrapped it much more at the beginning, but I just didn't know anything about technology or how much it would cost. I probably would have found a technical co-founder and worked with them to build the prototype and stuff. But I just didn't know. So, I made some mistakes in the early days, but hey, you pay the price of that.
Sure. And a lot of people are entrepreneurs like yourself watching the show, and they haven't gone through the process and haven't learned the hard lessons either. So you're suggesting that you would have gone out and found a technical co-founder that could have taken your vision and actually developed the product rather than hiring an entire team, outsourced team, to do the technical development.
You know what? I think there's pros and cons of doing it both ways. I think that getting a technical co-founder could be great if you found the right person and you shared the vision, but it also could be a disaster if I'd made my first development partners or any of the early development partners, co-founders. I think that potentially would have been a disaster because I would have lost control over what the vision is. And I think that a business is going to have a vision, right? And I think something that's quite dangerous, which I've seen with other friends who've had businesses who do have co-founders, is the co-founders disagree on the vision, and then that can really cost the business a lot. So even though it was very hard for me working with outsourced developers at the beginning, hey, we're still here, so something's worked out right.
And you still own 100% of it when you pay other people their full rate or whatever's negotiated in order to do the work on your behalf.
Yes. Well, yes and no. I mean, you have more control, but any money that you spend is diluting you in equity because you are raising money and then you're spending that money. So I spent way too much money on things. And because of that, I diluted myself. But hey.
All right. So you raised your $250,000. You hired your outsourcing team. As they're doing development, you went out and made your hundreds of pitches to try and raise your seed round of funding?
Yeah. So I closed 1.5 million seed round a year later. Mm-hmm. And that was from 21 different angel investors.
Wow.
And EMI Music also invested, the record company. So it was very hard to pull that together. And, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it the way I did. But one thing that came out of it is I got some awesome investors who have been really helpful in building the business. Like I know the group of investors that came in are of incredibly high quality and have helped in many ways. And also, I learned so much through that process.
Definitely. And you probably refined your business model as you were going as well, listening to what everybody had to say about it. Pros, cons, constructive.
Of course. And especially if you have lots of different angel investors like that, they all come from, they're all from different backgrounds. So they all come at it with different questions and challenge you in different ways. So, it's actually quite useful.
Yeah.
It can be frustrating, but it's useful.
So you said your seed round was about $1.5 million?
Yes.
So at this point, you've raised, what were you telling investors you were going to use this $1.5 million for?
So that was for the music site. That was before we really launched the music site. That helped us launch the music site.
Okay. And so that's the music site being able to categorize your playlists and then be able to organize around that?
Yeah.
Okay. And so by this point, you're at least 14 months in. So as you're making sales of those $2 million in ticket sales in the first 14 months, your investors are seeing that you're gaining traction and you're getting more sales.
Yes.
And then you closed your seed round.
No, we didn't actually launch the site. So we had a prototype, which wasn't really working. No, it wasn't ongoing. Wasn't growing ongoingly for the first year. We only launched the site properly after we closed the seed round.
Okay, great.
And that's when we started. Selling tickets.
Oh, okay. So you closed the seed round, you launched the site, then you started selling tickets, and you got $2 million in sales.
Yes.
Okay. And how much profit did you generate off of $2 million in sales?
Oh, very small. Our share of the ticket sales was small, so we didn't make the sales all ran through the existing ticketing sites, and we took a commission.
Gotcha.
So we were not profitable.
Okay, so you saw traction for the business model, but you weren't profitable yet.
Yes.
So where did you go from there?
So when we saw a lot of flaws in the business model, which, were mainly technical and mainly relied on, was because of all of these different integrations that we had to do. And also there were other flaws in the business model to do with the amount of, kind of like when tickets went on sale, when people would spend their advertising money, and when the actual large chunk of the tickets sold. So there was a few different challenges with the business model. And it was clear that although it could have been a nice little business, it was never going to be, the next Google or Facebook or anything like that. And so for me, and for the investors got into this because they wanted to take a punt on something that they thought could be massive.
Right.
And so we had to really relook at the model and go, okay, well this could do okay, but it's not going to be what we're not all in this for that. And so we relooked at the model. We looked at we had discovered this opportunity in retail, and we decided to go for it. And we took a lot of the learnings. Like I learned so much through doing the music site. Like there was many things that we did wrong just because I hadn't done it before. So we didn't spend nearly enough time talking to users at the beginning to really work out what was behind why they would share information about a show. Like why would they build a playlist? What were they actually doing it for? I came at it from the band side. So this time we went to build the retail model. We spent so much time researching it at the beginning that when we actually started designing the model, we had a really clear idea of the principles behind, why this was going to work. Like psychographically, we had unlocked why it was going to be successful before we started. So I think that was really important.
That makes perfect sense. So you listened to the customers, and now you started to build a different business model. Now you've I think collected about $2.25 million in investment. Was that your last amount of investment taken in, or did you?
So I raised another just under $1.5 million at the beginning of this year, and that was from mainly Silicon Valley investors, and that was on the basis of the retail model. Wow. So I went back out at the end of last year because I knew we were going to need some more money this year, and said, this is what we've done in music, this is why it worked, this is why it didn't work, and this is what we've learned from that process, and we have now created this, which we think is really going to go. And that the Silicon Valley investors invested on the basis of the retail idea, not on the basis of the music idea, although that they'd like to see that we had already built something, it had worked, and we'd learned a lot through that process. Right. So our chances of succeeding with the retail model were much greater than if we were just coming in and saying, we've got this idea.
Understood. So Silicon Valley investors put in another $1.5 million. How big is the market in the retail space in order for them to say, yes, we're going to put in another $1.5 million?
It's huge. So, it's much, much bigger than music. Shall I explain to you how the retail model works?
Please.
So, basically what we're trying to do is building a social search engine. So, how if you're looking for, say you're in a new city and you're looking for a restaurant or a hotel or a cafe or a gym or a yoga studio or whatever. Generally, people would say they would like to get a recommendation from a friend.
Definitely.
Usually they'll ask someone who lives there or someone who they know has traveled there for the recommendation if they know someone. If they can't find someone, which is often the case, then they'll look on Google, they'll look on Yelp, they'll look on Time Out or like one of those review sites for TripAdvisor for some kind of recommendation. But generally, that's only after asking a friend has failed. And so we think that we can do something which will work all the time for that first step in the recommendation process, which is asking a friend. We are doing social search. It is completely inefficient that everybody has all these favorite places. Something we found when we did our research this time is if you ask people, tell me about some of your favorite places, your favorite restaurants, hotels, yoga studios, cafes, anything that hairdressers, anything you've discovered anywhere in the world. Yeah. People would talk for an hour about all these places that they discovered in their life. And it was clear that they had kind of collected the real world, made this, the real world into this little collection. They loved sharing it. And so it was just seemed crazy that you couldn't, everyone has this collection, everyone wants to share their collection, and everybody wants to find from each other's collections when they're looking for somewhere, but there's no like place for that. There's no way of actually searching socially. And so that's what we've built. So the way that it works is when you join, another thing is we unlocked kind of why people share, whether it was about a band or a restaurant or a yoga studio or whatever. It was when you really got down to it with people, like why people share is because of status. It's because they want to get recognition from their friends for having great taste or having discovered something. And so knowing that and knowing that people wanted to get these recommendations, the way we built the site is that when you join, you get to build your own street. And it's just, your street is essentially the same kind of idea as a playlist, right? But it's a playlist of your favorite places. So your street is made up of your favorite, cafes, restaurants, bars, hotels, gyms, gift shops, bookshops, fashion shops, anywhere that you love, anywhere in the world. And the more you interact with initially you get 5 spots. The more you interact with the site, the more spots you get, so you can build your street out. Soon you'll be able to personalize, the color, the layout. You can decide if it's a laneway or an avenue or a boulevard or a country road or whatever it is that you want it to, how you want it to look like. So, and if you've traveled, so say you've been to New York and you wanted to add 3 New York places, you've been to Paris and you add a couple of places in Paris, you'll automatically get the landmarks behind those places on your street. So your street will be like a representation of you and kind of what great taste you have. Then if you zoom out of your street, you have a town, and the town is made up of all the streets of your Facebook friends. And soon you'll also be able to follow other people, and we've got a whole lot of celebrities starting streets. So you'll be able to like go on and see what your favorite celebrity has as their favorite places and add that to your town. So you can go and look at, a famous actor or musician or fashion designer or chef and see all of their favorite restaurants and their favorite fashion stores or whatever, and add that to your town. And then the really, the useful thing about it is that you can search it. So next time you are traveling somewhere and you want to find a hotel or a restaurant, you just go to posse.com and you search, restaurants in Santa Barbara, and it will bring up all of the favorite places of your friends, and then it will show you the favorite places of your friends of friends and the friends of friends of friends. And so you'll be able to see who loves what places and how you're connected to that person.
Great.
And because it's only like you only get a limited number of places on your street, it's all about your favorite places. It's all positive. So no one ever writes negative reviews. You don't add something to your street and then say you don't like it. It's always positive. And the only places you add are the really awesome places. So, we looked at Foursquare a lot and we're like, searching Foursquare really isn't that useful because it just shows me where all my friends have been. Like, I don't really care where they've been. I want to know where they love, where if they only had 5 places to say what their best places are, I want to know those places.
That makes perfect sense. And I see the differentiation there between Foursquare and what you're building. And I also see the differentiation between an online directory for a city where it shows me every single restaurant in there, and I have to weed through what's good and what's bad, what reviews have this and that, and I can just look at the reviews that have been positive.
Yeah, and you look at the reviews and you'll show you from your friends, and if you're in a little suburb somewhere and you go want to see, like I was in Noosa last weekend, which is this little beautiful little holiday town by the beach just north of Brisbane in Australia. And I've been there a few times and I've always tried to find a nice restaurant. I know that there are some really nice restaurants, but they're hidden. And all the kind of touristy restaurants are out the front, so I end up going to these touristy restaurants. And if you search on Google, you'll find all the touristy restaurants because they've, managed to work out the algorithms or whatever, they've linked their site so that they go to the top of Google. But when I searched Posse, I found these 3 restaurants listed, and I found them because one of the girls in our office, her friend lives in Noosa. And so she had put these restaurants on there as her favorites. I could see that this girl called Renee, who's a friend of Clarissa, had put this Bistro C restaurant as her favorite place in Noosa, and then these other 2 restaurants and her reviews of them. And I tried them and they were the best places in Noosa, so it totally works.
Excellent. So how many active users do you have in Posse.com right now?
So we've only launched 8 weeks ago, and so we have about 3,000 users, and we have over 5,000 shops have been listed.
Wow. So how will you know if Posse.com is successful?
When there's lots of users and we're, I guess, making revenues and things. When people go to it first, it'll be successful when we see people when they're traveling, they go there first.
Yeah, definitely. Top of mind, and having a domain name named Posse.com allows you to have that top of mind, recall. So you talked about revenue and I assume profits as one of the success metrics for you. How is Posse.com monetizing the business of having reviews entered?
So when you add your favorite places, those favorite places then get contacted. So if they're not on our system yet, they'll get contacted very shortly after and be told that one of their customers has added them as one of their favorite places in the world, at which point the shop's always like, oh, that's really nice, it's exciting. Then we ask if they want to list in our system. They send us their logo and photo and an image. We make them a hand-drawn version of their shop for the site. So they get a little beautiful hand-drawn depiction of their shop, which gets listed. So when other people add them, they get this hand-drawn version of the shop on their street. Then we start sending them reports every time someone adds them as one of their favorite places. So if you added what's an example of a place that you would add?
I would add a local coffee shop called Blackbird Bakery. Okay,
so say you add Blackbird Bakery, then they would get contacted within a week and they'll get listed on our site. And then if somebody else goes and adds, so say your friend James also adds, or say someone else adds Blackbird Bakery, then Blackbird Bakery get an email report showing them that someone has added them as one of their favorite places. They can see who the person is, what they've said about them, how many Facebook friends they have, anything that their friends have said about them. They can then log into their dashboard. So the retailers all have their own dashboard where they can see all the people that have recommended them, what everyone said about them, and they can thank those customers. So what we found from speaking to retailers is that word of mouth is their most important and most effective form of marketing. But it's the thing they have the least control over and the least kind of understanding of.
Right.
So they know that word of mouth is really important, but they're like, we don't know which customers are talking about us or what they're saying or if they're referring friends. We just kind of, we hope that they are and we think that they are because more people are coming. Right. But this actually gives them a dashboard where they can see exactly which customers are referring their friends, what they're saying about them, how influential they are, and they can recognize those customers through the system. They can send them a message and they can send them a gift voucher. Wow. So if they say, hey, thanks, James added them as one of his favorite places, they can send James a gift and say, hey James, thanks so much for promoting us. Next time you come in, have a complimentary coffee and muffin on us. And that gets sent. And then James gets a notification from Posse saying, hey, Blackbird Bakery just sent you a gift. When he looks at his street, he sees this beautiful gift box sitting outside Blackbird Bakery. He clicks on it, brings up a really nice note from the store and a gift voucher that he can use next time he goes in there.
Excellent. So I would assume that you'd want to...
awesome user experience.
I would assume that you'd want to try and optimize the process as much as possible and automate the process. What happens when Blackbird Bakery, for instance, doesn't have an email address because it's a local, small, mom-and-pop shop that's run by literally a mom and a pop?
Well, we found that there's virtually, there's such a tiny number of stores that don't have email addresses. I mean, of the stores that are getting put on the site, we're listing 90% of them.
Okay.
So very few don't have an email address.
So you find their website and then you find their email address?
Yes, we do. Okay. We find their website, we call them, we get their email address, and we send them the reports. And it's done by an outsourced team.
Great.
So...
and how much do you charge a business to be able to manage their customers and that have come to review them on Posse?
So the business can do it for free up until they have 10 customers that have added them. So if the Blackbird Bakery is really tiny, less than 10 people add them, then they'll always be able to use it for free. But it's really for bigger stores that have, we've got stores on there already that have been listed by more than 60 people. So for them, it's really useful to be able to go on through and see everybody and recognize them. And these are people that are actively out there promoting their store.
Right.
They can they can recognize those people. And so they pay $50 a month as a subscription fee. And then we've also got another subscription fee tier, which we'll be introducing soon, which will be $100 a month, which will be like you can kind of enhance your search results, much like Google you get. But and that's because it's like drawn like a game. They get a better version of a shop. So they get a shop which stands out more in the town, and they can also add offers to their store. So if you're say you're a restaurant and you want to attract new customers, but the daily deal sites are giving you customers that are just kind of random people who want cheap stuff and never come back.
Right.
You could instead use Posse and make a 2-for-1 offer on Posse, and the only people that will see that offer are friends of people that have added that store as one of their favorite places. So they're friends of your best customers, so they're much more likely to be targeted customers, and the store seem to be really loving that idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So clearly, Posse.com is based off of being able to grow your users, your active users, as quickly as possible. You don't want just people signing up and never coming back. You want people coming in, reviewing the places that they love, so that there'll be more places in there, so that more people show up, do a search, and see something that they'd like to try out. What's your marketing strategy for attracting more people, more users to Posse.com, so you get more businesses in there reviewed more, which then feeds upon itself?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, firstly, we're talking to people like you, but we're very much early in the kind of very early stages of marketing it. So the site's only been live, I said, for like 8 or 9 weeks. So we're very much evolving the site. We're officially launching in Australia at the end of October, and then we'll be launching in the US at South by Southwest next year.
Excellent.
But I mean, it's inherently viral because as soon as you join, it works better the more friends that you have on the system. So your town grows when you invite more people in, and you get better search results the more, like if you want to find out all your friends' favorite places, they need to be on the system as well. So yeah, we're encouraging people, I guess, to invite their friends in. And then we're getting a lot of celebrities to start streets. I think that will be interesting as well. Like people love knowing where their favorite celebrities hang out. So I think that will be a great way to grow as well.
I would love to have a celebrity visiting domain Sherpa.com and talking about how they, bought their own domain name after learning about Cedo or learning about different auction platforms. How do you get a celebrity to use your service?
Well, you have a great service, I think. And I guess it starts by having some friends who are celebrities, and then having some investors who are friends who are celebrities, and then getting a few people on it, and then just making it great. And then if they like it, then they're going to keep using it. I mean,
got it. So
Twitter,
you're using your friends and investors who know famous people to reach out on your behalf.
Yeah, to get the first lot of people in. But if you look at something like Twitter, I mean, that's what they did at the beginning. They got a couple of great celebrities, and then people started following them, and then everybody else did the same thing because it was a great site, right?
Right. Exactly.
So I think, it comes down to the site being an awesome experience and really useful.
All right. A couple of final questions for you, Rebekah. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. On your personal blog, you wrote, "This is really hard" about Posse.com. What's been the hardest part of this startup?
It depends on which phase you ask me. I thought that the hardest part would be raising the money, and then I thought that the hardest part after that would be getting the right team. But I think really the hardest part is about getting the product right. So just, firstly, getting the product market fit right, so figuring out how the product should work. That's really hard, but I feel like we've nailed that now. Now what's really hard is just designing the product the right way so that it's engaging, so that people understand it, so that it's really useful, and then ultimately so that retailers will pay for it as well. So I think the hardest thing for me has been getting the product right, but that's, I guess, just because I'm at that phase now. So that's what keeps me awake at night right now.
All right, and my last question has to do with entrepreneurship and domain names. I was Jason Fried, who runs 37 Signals, recently bought Basecamp.com. Basecamp is a fantastic online project management system, very fast, very easy to use. It's Ajaxy, it's sexy. After years of operating that business and being a very successful business, he operated under basecamphq.com. So Basecamp headquarters. That was the domain name. When asked about it on a recent interview, he suggested that others don't buy basecamp.com, don't buy the posse.com, for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars right off the bat, but instead buy a domain name for $9 per year, hand registered, build a great company on it, make sure you're making money, and then when you're making money and you have that opportunity, then go buy the great domain name. After having been through everything that you have over the past few years, Rebekah, do you agree with that, or do you take a different view?
Depends how you want to do it. I mean, and I just did things a different way around. I think that definitely there's a lot to be said for starting with a really cheap domain name and then also bootstrapping the first version of a product and testing it. And, using the kind of lean, I guess he's using lean startup methodology in terms of his domain name purchasing as well. And it's definitely a really good way to do it. I guess I just did it a different way. Where I didn't have any technical experience. I didn't know how, I needed to raise money right from the beginning. I think that having a great domain name really, it sounded like it was going to be big right from the outset. And I definitely think that it helped, that having that domain name helped me raise money. And I think that it just also, it felt big. It felt like, it feels like it's going to be a big site because the name's so good. And it being, it was also flexible. It enabled us to I guess, evolve the model and, I don't know. I definitely, I don't regret it for a second. I think it's one of the best decisions that I made.
Excellent. And as an entrepreneur, spending 100% of your time working on something, having a great domain name and a great brand that you're building, I know can contribute a lot to your enthusiasm and that you have on that project. Yeah,
completely. And, hiring team members, encouraging people, to leave their high-paying jobs and Google and stuff and join you. I think having a great brand it feels like it's going somewhere. I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Definitely. Rebekah Campbell, founder and CEO at posse.com. Thank you for coming on the show today, and thanks for being a domain Sherpa for other entrepreneurs.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
If you have a follow-up question for Rebekah, please post in the comments below, and we'll ask her to come back and answer as many as she can. You can follow Posse at Twitter at Posse, Posse, and Facebook at posse.com. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.